pop up on your screen that says the meeting is now recording. And yeah. So this is the June 29th meeting of the joint Northside and Southside Green Zone. And we do not have quorum yet, but we are going to jump into the topics for the evening. Our main topic tonight is air pollution. And we have a number of guests whom many of you can see from Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. We have one and hopefully more this evening guests from the City of Minneapolis Health Department, who are all experts in this field and will be able to share different activities or actions or strategies that they are working on to mitigate air pollution in the green zones. So as I mentioned, this is a joint green zone meeting, Northside and Southside. This is something we've started doing quarterly because both Northside and Southside Green Zone have adopted their work plans as of the end of 2019, early 2020, and there are many initiatives that are cross-cutting amongst them. And one of those is air pollution. It's been a priority topic for both groups. So we are coming together for these conversations so that we can collaborate. I want to set some context before I hand it over to our guests to share what they have to share. And that is, these conversations have been ongoing for a number of years. But I think what it really started to gain momentum last fall when the MPCA and the state health department and the city health department came together and created a presentation on air pollution and COVID-19. And they gave this presentation both to the Northside Green Zone and to the Minneapolis City Council. And it was, I think, telling in both that there is still disproportionate air impacts in the city of Minneapolis in our green zones. And there's also a correlation between where there's been long-term air pollution and the rates of COVID-19 mortality, in fact. And there are things that we can do to mitigate our air pollution to reduce some of those disparities. So in the meeting with the Northside Green Zone last fall, task force members raised a number of requests, recommendations, however you might want to think about it. And noted that they wanted to see the same level of urgency at the agency, city, county, state level that they felt for their community. And some of the recommendations included increasing air monitors in the green zones, identifying sources of pollution, and then creating strategies to address those sources specifically. So, for example, how much of our air pollution is coming from vehicles and what are the options for addressing vehicle pollution? And then creating a plan to decrease pollution based on different sources. Another area was, what are the options that community members can really organize around, particularly where there may be limitations for cities, county, or state governments where like we might not be able to take action, speaking as someone who works at the city of Minneapolis, but where community might not have those same limitations. Another one was a desire for more specific examples of work has been and is being done in the Northside and Southside green zones to reduce pollution and how much impact that has. And then the final one is bringing permitted facilities into the room with impacted residents and community members to facilitate those conversations. So these are some of the recommendations coming from the Northside Green Zone just shy of a year ago, maybe about 9 months ago at the September meeting. And so I just wanted to say I really appreciate that so many folks from the MPCA and the city have shown up tonight to have this conversation. I think it does show how serious the state is taking this and desire to work with community on these issues. So with that, I want to hand it over to folks from the state. And Jenny, I also want to note you're here, and if there's at any point you want to jump in and share, you know, if there's like the city's collaborating on anything with the state, or if there's something the state mentions where you're like, oh, the city's been thinking about doing that. This can be more, I think, about like a discussion format. And as there's things that are sort of action items, coming forward. Let's note those. And we're going to break out into breakout rooms later where community members and agency staff can like really start getting into strategizing about what are the next steps. Who else do we need to bring in these conversations and how do we continue this collaboration? I will stop there and hand it over to MPCA. I think Jose Luis, you were going to kick it off for folks.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having us here today, and we're really excited for this conversation, this dialogue, and also in the fact that this is not an end all, and that we're gonna have this be an opportunity to continue to have a dialogue and conversation with community members from the South Side and North Side. Again, my name is Jose Luis Villaseñor. I'm the Environmental Justice Outreach Coordinator in the Commissioner's Office with the within our Engagement and Environmental Justice Unit. And just before I begin, I just want to say that that today we have in front of you a team from the NPCA that are tirelessly working to fulfill our mission of protecting the environment and human health. We understand and acknowledge that the disproportionate exposure to pollution that Indigenous communities and communities of color and low-income, low-wealth communities are experiencing is something that didn't happen in a vacuum. As an agency, we're learning and unlearning the ways that communities and neighborhoods look and function are due to structural racism, redlining, racial covenants, and historical disinvestments of Indigenous and communities of color, low-wealth communities that continue to impact our communities to today. And so I just want to make that acknowledgement as we go into a really hard conversation, and I'll share with you what we know and what we've been gathering on the environmental impacts that folks are experiencing, like in my neighborhood in South Minneapolis, and some of you all that live in the North Side Renaissance. So I'll just hand it over to Helen or to Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Jose Luis. I'll just share a little bit more. You know, we're just really appreciative that we're here in this space with you, and definitely there are challenges that we know we have limitations on as a government, you know, state government, but at the same time, there are lots of opportunities that we want to be able to work together on. And just want to acknowledge that we know that the questions that were raised at the last meeting are very important. And so I kind of wanted just to touch on, you know, some of that, especially the first one mostly, you know, as far as the question about bringing permitted facilities into the room with impacted residents and community members. I really want to note, you know, that is something that we've heard from this group and community members. And I think that is something that we can definitely work towards and understand, you know, together what the purpose and goals of that kind of meeting would be. You know, because it would be one thing for us to assume what that conversation would need to entail, but it would really be helpful to hear directly from the community in this group what would be the expected outcomes from that, so that we could help, you know, make sure that the right folks are in the room to help get the right framing together even prior to the meeting, as much as that is helpful with our connections there. So I just wanted to note that that is something that we aren't able to kind of require right now, but something we're working on and have heard as an important piece of that. So I just wanted to touch on that first bullet. I know we're going to go into breakout sessions and dive in a bit more. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Craig to kind of go into the other questions that were brought up at the last meeting related to the specific asks on, you know, sources of pollution and some of the limitations that we may have that you don't have that we can work together on.
Thanks, Helen. My name is Craig McDonnell, and I serve as an Assistant Commissioner for Air and Climate Policy at the PCA. And just grateful to be in this room tonight with all of you, and really kind of, as Jose Luis and Helen said, to be in that listen and learn mode and look at those opportunities to collaborate. I think it's really important just to reiterate what Jose Luis said, that, you know, we see this as part of an ongoing conversation there, and we hope that you know, that is the case, where it will be ongoing and we can continue to discuss these issues. air quality is something that we know is felt differently in local communities. As a state, I think we've presented data before that shows that we're meeting federal and state air quality measures across the state, but communities are experiencing them much differently. Not all communities have access to good quality air, right? We know that Black communities, Indigenous communities, communities of color have air quality that is worse off as a whole. And that is something that is concerning to us as an agency. I think it's important to note one of our long-term or forever goals is addressing disproportionate impacts. And we view that as kind of that long-term or forever goal because the work is so complex, it is so challenging, but it is so, so important. And we hear urgency in your voice, we feel that urgency, and we're going to continue to be here and be in community conversations like this to continue to feel that urgency. So I just want to acknowledge that from the start. I will say that some of the challenges with air quality, I think, is what we know, is the complexity of it and the different sources. We have stacks and stacks of data at PCA, and we're happy to dive into the data. And we can invite our colleagues in, and we can be responsive to requests here. But there's kind of how we think about air quality and we think about those emission sources really are a couple of major buckets. One is what we call our neighborhood sources, and those are unpermitted sources sometimes. It can be things like backyard fires, maybe a small business that doesn't require an air permit because of just the way our permitting process is set up with emissions. That could be something like a gas station, right? It could be your neighbor using an internal combustion engine in their lawnmower. That would be a neighborhood source. And that is one of the drivers of poor air quality here. Another one is, I think, what we all know, those mobile sources, car traffic, diesel emissions from buses, from heavy duty vehicles, those things. And there's opportunities for the state and the federal government there for all of us to work together. And there's opportunities to think about our transportation system as a whole. And that's part of the challenging of this work is how it's multi-jurisdictional, multi-agency, but it's so important to hear that. Another piece driving air quality, right, is off-road vehicles. And those are some of the things like construction equipment at times, or those stationary sources that maybe aren't on the road that will be using diesel fuel. So, and lastly, I think is what we all know when we think of air pollution is that permitted facility, that industrial source, the thing with the smokestack where you can see visible emissions coming out of it. And so we know that that's a driver as well. And over time, we have seen air quality improve generally in a lot of places, but again, it hasn't addressed the disproportionate impacts. But what we've seen is those industrial sources are less of a contributor than they used to be at times to our poor air quality. We've seen coal-fired power plants retire and transition away. That's benefited everyone, and that's reduced emissions from that source. But again, there's more to be done in kind of that. The one area that's kind of sticky and harder are those neighborhood sources. The first one that I mentioned, that has stayed relatively constant in terms of our air emissions and for our sources across the state. So now I think the question here is what is MPCA doing and how can we work with you all? And just kind of thinking about some of the ways that we've continued to tackle air pollution as a whole, but we want your input, we want feedback, we want to understand, what it is you're seeing, what it is you're experiencing there. So I'll go through a few things, but we'll, be able to take questions, discuss it. On that regulate. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Craig, do you want to hold off on a second? We have about 10 to 12 people that were on another link. And so they're all coming over right now. We were hanging out wondering where Kelly was.
Thanks for texting me, Patrick.
Yeah.
I figured that would happen at some point. I guess I'm surprised it took a year of virtual meetings. And what's weird is I don't have another meeting invitation on my calendar. So I don't even know where that other meeting came from.
It was the email that you sent out, was it earlier today?
Oh, did it have the wrong link in it?
It had a link on it, and we were all on, we all used that one to get in.
Yikes. All right, looks like they're starting to come in now. Hey folks, sorry about that mix up. We're just, going along over here.
We did roll call.
Hey, thought we were skipping out on you or what?
All right, I'll let those who are in the other meeting let me know when you feel like most of them have gotten over, because I don't know who all was there.
Y'all try to get rid of us, huh?
I couldn't do it if I tried. That's the problem. So clearly it was accident.
I know. We love you.
All right.
It was
Well,
3 people.
3 more people? Okay.
Yes.
Do you remember who they were?
Wendy Hansen, Karen Clark, and Steve Sandberg.
Okay, looks like Wendy's on, so waiting for Karen and Steve.
I'll just say it was really tricky getting back on unless you actually exited the meeting, because it said rejoin. And when you rejoined, it rejoined the same call. So I had a hard time getting back on too.
Okay.
Anyway, just letting you know about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's helpful. Thanks, Michelle. Megan, your text message makes a lot more sense now.
We were wondering why you were being so cryptic.
Yeah. Nope, just over here.
All right. Well, there's no one in the other room. I just went and checked that. So.
Okay. Well, for those of you who I mistakenly sent contact information or login information to the wrong meeting, I gave some background on where this conversation started over the last year and last September when MPCA and the State Health Department and City Health Department gave a presentation on air pollution and COVID. And then kind of the follow-up, the action items that the Northside Green Zone had come up with in that September conversation with MPCA. So we were starting to hear from folks at the MPCA on basically responses to where we're at with those action items. So I don't think we need to go back and repeat everything that was said. But Craig, maybe if you kind of want to give a little recap of where you started.
Yeah, happy to. And we were discussing kind of the sources of air pollution there as MPCA kind of categorizes them. And we talked about neighborhood sources being, backyard fires, mowers, lawn equipment, things like that, things that are unregulated that we know contribute to poor air quality. Generally, another source is, right, kind of mobile sources, which has 2 categories. It's that traffic piece, so cars, heavy duty vehicles, buses, things like that. And also then off-road vehicle equipment, which can be construction equipment, which are also diesel engines and things like that, that create pollution impacts for our air. And then the third bucket is the bucket I think we all think about, and that's the industrial sources. So the things with the smokestack and other things like that that are required to come into and get a permit from MPCA. And so that way we have some direct control over those facilities. And was talking about how, tackling each one of those is a little bit complex, but we have seen some reductions in terms of different buckets of there. So our industrial sources, when we think about them statewide, and again, this is statewide, not on the local, not necessarily that local level, but our coal-fired power plants are retiring for renewable energy, which is a great thing, and that's improving air quality everywhere. So that's a start, right? And we're seeing other industrial sources start to clean up as well, but that's been a big C, is the power generation sector getting cleaner. So we're seeing lower emissions of different pollutants that are concerning for ground level ozone, particulate matter, those things that really drive, asthma rates and just other health impacts related to our cardiovascular systems as well there. And so recognizing that those are the four sources, was just going to talk a little bit about some of the things that MPCA is doing, but really looking forward to having this be a conversation about, what folks here are seeing, experiencing, and how more needs to be done. Because as I mentioned to this group, it is one of our long-term forever goals is to address disproportionate impacts from pollution. So when it comes to the regulated sources in those categories, we've been focusing a lot of our efforts on environmental justice communities and thinking about how we can do more to alleviate some of those disproportionate impacts we're seeing there. So when a facility is in an environmental justice area of concern, it comes in and falls in through our environmental justice implementation plan for a permit there, which focuses on increased community engagement, additional meetings with the regulated party and with community to understand what's going on and to see the impacts that are there. Through that kind of engagement in that process, in some ways it's formalized as like it is for the Phillips community. We want to see reductions and voluntary reductions sometimes from regulated parties. There's a limitation there that it is a challenge because it's voluntary for some of them. If they are underneath those state and federal standards, to get them to do more is going to require action from the business having that willingness to do so. And some businesses have shown willingness, others haven't. But we want to continue to do that work and to do that engagement. But we know that's not enough. And so we do have a focus on pushing an environmental justice package at the legislature. And we can talk about that more in some detail. We've got Greta Goth here, our Assistant Commissioner for Government Relations here, which would help give us some more teeth to do more through our permitting process there. So that's one aspect, is making sure to seek those voluntary reductions and prioritizing the work that we do based on facilities that we know are driving risk and that are located within or contributing to environmental justice concerns. For the mobile sources, I'm thinking about traffic, taking kind of a multi-pronged approach there. One of the things that we are proud of is we have undertaken a rulemaking, and the governor has approved it for what's called Clean Cars Minnesota, to regulate tailpipe emissions for passenger duty vehicles, and light duty trucks. And so that will, when it is phased in 2025, which is an immediate, we recognize, lower some of those harmful emissions, both fighting climate change as well as reducing particulate matter and some ground level ozone forming compounds as well. And so that's been one aspect on the regulatory piece. We've also dedicated our Volkswagen settlement, which is $47 million that the state received through the Volkswagen emissions scandal. Volkswagen was having their cars cheat the system, essentially, and say they were less polluting than they actually were. Each state received some money. And targeting those funds towards electric vehicles. So electric school buses is one pilot that we have there. We're also targeting electric heavy-duty vehicles, so some of those trucks, mine trucks, other things like that, those large diesel engines that are just so dirty and contributing to poor air quality in a number of places. Increasing charging equipment for EV infrastructure there to make sure that we're incentivizing people who are able to drive electric vehicles. That's one piece of it. And then another piece that we're continuing to work on is related to those neighborhood sources and working in partnership with groups called Clean Air Minnesota, which is made up with Environmental Initiative, the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, and others to see what we can do to address neighborhood sources of pollution. That can be, there's a project there called Project CAR, which we partner with garages to improve some of the emissions control equipment on cars that are coming in for folks who need it at no cost to them. There's a number of garages there we're working with. We're also looking at how we can project stove swap, so people who may be reliant on wood heaters and other types of stoves for their heating needs, how we can get them efficient stoves that improve air quality as well. And so those are just a few of the things that we are doing here. Happy to kind of take questions. We've got a number of folks from our team on some of those projects, but we can also talk about some of the work at the legislature, because we do see that as one of those opportunities to partner. But I think we also could think about our grant making authority and the fact that we do provide grants to small business assistants and other folks to address some of those neighborhood sources.
Greg, I see one question in the chat already from Marita. It says, how much lower are the emissions from industries? We need more than voluntary actions from industries. If the laws/regulations permit harm, then they need to be changed. There needs to be changes.
Appreciate that comment, Marita. And I think that's some information we can pull together, some examples of actual reductions. One of the success stories that we talk about is Nico Plating in Minneapolis. It's a plater, and working with them, we got them before the TCE ban, trichloroethylene, was put in place, that the legislature and the agency banned last year, to completely switch that chemical away from TCE to a less harmful chemical. TCE is a carcinogen, and through working with them to install pollution control equipment, they're actually below a permitted threshold for needing a permit. So they don't need a permit, but we've also worked with them to ensure that some of their pollution control equipment, wet scrubbers, are continuing in operation there. So it's one example of some of the voluntary work that we've done. But I think your second point is kind of the key there. If laws and regulations permit harm, what can we do? And that's been a focus of working with Representative Lee, but also others, to think about what we can do for environmental justice and seeing those changes and enhancing MPCA's authority at times to take action.
Kelly, can I jump in really quick and just think of time, one, and then two, if we want to turn it over to the city and or think about breakout rooms, if we're still going to do that, so we can dive a little deeper. I mean, that question that we just read, we covered just now, is really important. Could be a pocket or a bucket we could spend some time on. And there might be other folks or other questions that we can create. Some breakout sessions we can dive a little deeper, breakout rooms, excuse me. So I just wanted to see if we still want to do that, or hand it over to the city for a little bit, or do you want us to continue? What do you think, Kelly?
I think Michelle has a question first before we move on.
Thanks. So I just have a couple questions. One is, can you tell me if you advocate for Karen Clark's law that is just right now in the East Phillips neighborhood, and if that is something that could be for either the entire, I mean, obviously it would be for the entire state since you're at the state level. And then I guess I'm curious, like, where the stationary sources would be, like GAF, Northern Metals, the businesses that really impact Northside. So those are my two questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And I might invite my colleague Greta to come in and talk about some of the legislation that we've been working on this past session and we'll be continuing to work on. And this is one of those buckets that we're hopeful folks will dive in with us on.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Hi, everybody. My name is Greta Gothier, and I'm an assistant commissioner at MPCA, and my area is government relations, legislative and congressional. So great question, Michelle. Thank you. Yes, we have been working on expanding the current statute that Karen Clark and Linda Berglund put in place, 14 years ago now, to a wider area and actually statewide. And so we brought a bill in this session. There were other bills. Representative Fu Lee had a bill, And we worked with him very intensely over the course of the session to kind of blend our two bills. And that language that we crafted did pass off of the House floor this year. And so that's a huge step forward. So we're really excited about that. And we want to build on that next session and try to figure out how to advance it further. This year, unfortunately, in the Minnesota Senate, the bills could not even get hearings. So we are, our legislature kind of represents the whole country and the divide, between the ways people see things. So we did get a really good bill off the House floor. We had a lot of good discussions, got a lot of issues out in front of a lot of legislators so they understand better. And I wish we could have passed it. The governor was ready to sign it, very, very supportive, and the lieutenant governor. But we were not able to make that happen this year because of the leadership of the Senate. Just did not want to do it at all. So we'd like to talk about that at some point with you, and how can we move, what are the options to move around that or try to address that, maybe bringing in other partner organizations and that kind of thing. But this year we did make some success, and I'm very happy about that. We made strong success in the House, but we got blocked in the Senate.
It looks like there's a hand raised by Karen.
Yes. I just want to make sure there's a part 2 to the question. I don't know if we addressed that.
Oh, great. Thanks, Helen.
Great. Yeah, and I can touch on that. It was kind of related to some of the specific facilities in North Minneapolis, like Northern Metals, GAF, and some of those other facilities. And I will tell you, that's another part that we worked on this legislative session, kind of when it relates to bad actors, was being able to reopen permits. I know this group's had a conversation about not expiring state permits, and that was something we sought in statute, was the ability, when you have non-compliance, to be able to reopen that permit for a clear reason and to compel them not to operate until we can be assured of compliance there. Currently, the way our state laws and regulations are set up, companies that are out of compliance do have that opportunity to come back into compliance. So we wanted to just seek some of that clarity in law, in those statutes, to help us take the actions that we know, so many of you want, because it is frustrating to see bad actors continue to act bad at times. So that's one of the things that we looked at as it relates to GAF and some of the other facilities kind of in North Minneapolis. They are part of that pilot project that we've talked about at times, which was called the Minneapolis Project. We're continuing to reach out to them, having our permit engineers reach out to those facilities who may be in compliance with their permit, but we know that we are still seeing issues with dust and other pollutants in that corridor, particularly to see if we can get more out of them. It's that issue for voluntary efforts. We've had some success with GAF and prompting them to think more about what they can do. One of those things is to install what's called a regenerative thermal oxidizer. It's a piece of pollution control equipment that burns up pollution to lower their VOC impacts and things like that. But it is voluntary, and we've heard that as a result of the pandemic, they pushed that from doing that. So we're actually going to be following back up with them in the coming days to see where that has been. We are coming out of a pandemic. We're seeing the economy pick up a little bit for some, not for all, and where they're at. They'd said that that's something they want to do. But again, it's one of those issues with voluntary compliance. So seeking that opportunity through statute and rule is going to be so important.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yep.
Craig, you said something about what GAF has been asking or has been saying that they're going to put this filter in for at least 7 years now. And I think that the community definitely didn't want to move forward with anything from them, because once you accept that, then you have to accept the whole facility moving forward, because they put all this money into it. And I think it should be pointed out that during COVID, the industry wasn't, they didn't have to stop working. So even though COVID was happening, I don't think that their emissions went down or under, or that they had to stop. So if their emissions didn't change or go down, or their business didn't go down, then why would they be allowed to like have an excuse during COVID to not put whatever filter that they had been claiming that they were going to put for a long time? And I also have an issue with like that conversations that the community, me specifically, I've been asking for the MPCA to hold conversations between community, or at least set them up for community and these facilities. And now I'm seeing folks who are already kind of in cahoots with each other planning these meetings. And I'm kind of frustrated a little bit about that, because I said I wasn't going to really talk about it today, but I just feel like it should be noted. Can somebody mute their phone? I guess I'm concerned that whenever businesses who already work together and benefit with each other start to lead these conversations together, it's like co-opting the issues that the community has raised, and then kind of still kind of gatekeeping around the conversation. And so I just want to let y'all know that's moving forward, even though I've been requesting that for a long time, but that's moving forward, and with people who are benefiting off of each other. And I just think that that's just a conflict of interest. Like I don't want to be led by organizations that are already benefiting or in relationship with these facilities, and then they're leading the conversations for community. It doesn't feel right. That's all. I guess the first part was a question, Craig. I'm sorry, I gave you a lot. The first part was a question, and it was more based on how are they getting away with not getting whatever they were supposed to do for the benefit of the community with the filter. They didn't do that, but there was no like regulation stopping of facilities during COVID.
Right. So I think that's one of those issues, right? We operate under some federal and state air quality rules and regs. And so that's where the permits are at, where companies who are in compliance with those permits are allowed to operate, which at times we know there's frustration out there, deep frustration. What I can say about community meetings, I think Jose Luis and Helen had mentioned something earlier, so I'd invite them to jump in about that. It's something we definitely want to understand more, how we can structure that and how we can play a role there, but how those conversations and use our context, so an opportunity for collaboration there. One of the things we also looked for this legislative session as part of that EJ bill was specific authority to require companies to hold community meetings at a regular basis and have that as a permit condition, because we have heard the desire from your group and other folks about continuing to have those communications, and we want to be able to include that in a permit.
Well, in the meantime, since I've been asking for over 2 years, can somebody just send me the emails of the people of GAF, tag me on it, and tell them that the community's been asking for this information and for this for a while now. And so I'll move forward with it, on my own, since I can't really get the support. So can somebody send me the emails of the GAF corporation, so that community will figure it out on our own if we're not going to get the support?
Roxanne, yeah, I can work on that, try to get you all those emails. I think for us, it makes more sense, and it comes from you all. We can support and giving you the information, being in the room, assisting with folks that can have some data and information to help you all to have a conversation with the facilities. But I think you're right. I think it makes more sense, and it looks less greenwashing if it's us convening this meeting and not the community that are requesting them. So yeah, we definitely can assist you in finding that information, who you should talk to. I think you're probably thinking of this as well, not only as community members, but to see if maybe like Alliance or Nexus or other folks that maybe folks have been in concert with, to help kind of either facilitate and or bring some, I don't know, some, how do I say, templates
That sounds like a
to
good
push these
idea.
facilities
Yeah.
to be better neighbors in our communities.
And I'll add to that really quick, Jose Luis, because Roxanne, the others that were in the other meeting weren't in yet. I brought up that is something we'd want to dive in on to talk about so that we can set those help set those expectations from using the community voice, because it would feel paternalistic if we, you know, as an agency said, let's bring you all into a room, whereas it's really, you know, what is the ultimate goal and ultimate purpose so that we can help make sure that those people in the facility realm are aware that this is the conversation, the community wants to have this conversation, and these are the goals that they're working to achieve. That would be helpful to help bring everyone together. And I'm not sure if we haven't done that yet because we haven't had this conversation. So I'm not sure what other meetings are being planned, but I just wanted to note that that was a piece of the conversation that the rest of the group that was in the other meeting missed. So thanks.
I believe Pillsbury United Communities, I'm thinking, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's just PPP and environmental initiative. And I don't really care that environmental initiative is involved, but I do have some issues with like co-opting and people coming in and all of a sudden they're taking communities' requests and turning it into their own meetings. And the city is even like not respecting like I don't know how many times I've asked Patrick to do it. I mean, I keep emailing about it. It's been like 2-3 years and it's just, I don't know. I guess I just be wondering like how long do you scapegoat community?
So I think Jose was going to follow up with Roxanne, and then we have a question from Karen and then Marita.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I missed the first part of the presentation. I think maybe Craig was making it. I've been back and forth several ways to get in. So thank you all for being here. And Greta, I wanted to just say it's great to see you again, even virtually. I wanted to ask you if you would send that the language of that final bill that passed the House to all of the folks here so that we're all kind of up to date on that. So that was one thing, and maybe if you get it to Kelly, we can all then look at it and begin the fight for it, or maybe even make it better. I'm not sure what all it says. I didn't see a final version myself. The second thing I think I wanted to ask, I think, Craig, you were talking about reopening permits only if there's non-compliance. You know, one of our situations in East Phillips is that we have two long-term industries whose permit, as far as I understand, are about 20 years old and have not been updated. And there's been all kinds of discussion about this for several years, and certain kinds of promises that, you know, yes, they were going to be updated and so on. And then we also have a grandfathering issue with those two industries. The two industries I'm talking about are Smith Foundry and Bituminous Roadways. And you know, I live fairly near there, as does Jose Luis and others on this call. So it's frustrating not to have that updated. So I don't want to wait for someone to determine that they're in non-compliance. And we would like the MPCA's support to help change the state law that allows Minneapolis to continue to keep them zoned in our community. And this is a community with a lot of residential people where rezoning was something that one of our city council members tried to do, could not do because both the MPCA and the city of Minneapolis opposed it. So that's one second thing to ask about. And then the third one is those industries and others, the kind of monitoring that's going on. You know, we're supposed to be happy with 2.5 being in one place in the whole community. And even that does not help us understand smaller nanoparticles getting into our bodies and causing this disproportionate racial disparities, health burden within East Phillips. And so I'm just wondering, And again, maybe you talked about some of this one before I got on, but I'm wondering when we're going to get better monitoring in, especially in the green zones, something that really will help our people understand what's going on. And I mean, is the MPCA trying to get that? I mean, I know there's been a problem with getting resources in the past, so maybe that's part of the answer, but you have to want it first.
Yeah, great questions, Karen, and nice to see you again. Maybe I'll start with the last one first. Representative Clark and I have worked on some issues related to water gremlin too. There. So on the monitoring piece, and I might invite Patrick or Todd B, one of my colleagues, to jump in. We definitely want to understand better what additional monitoring the community would like. And one of the things we've been thinking about is some more, as you mentioned, Karen, that localized kind of impact monitoring about what individuals are seeing as opposed to just necessarily ambient air quality there. So we've been talking and just initial conversations about, what we think we might be able to have for resources to use some sensors. Sensors are some of those things called like purple air or other qualities, right? Other monitors to look at fine particles, because that is one pollutant of concern. And there is the sensor is small, it's portable, the technology has been vetted. So that could be an opportunity to look at some of those local impacts to address those neighborhood sources. Like, are we seeing if your neighbor is out mowing their grass 4 times a day, or 4 times a week rather, is that going to be contributing to worse air quality and some things like that? So we want to consider that. We also, as part of our monitoring plan, the PCA operates 56 monitors across the state, are putting a new monitor for fine particles in North Minneapolis. We have 2 sites in South Minneapolis, as we've said there. But maybe I'll just let Patrick or Todd talk about some of the monitoring ideas that we're having in some of these initial conversations, because I do think that is a piece, as Kelly noted in the chat, to understand what community is looking for. And data is fantastic. We need data to make good decisions, but ultimately it's helpful to know the outcomes too that people are seeking from that monitoring data, so you can design a program accordingly.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we have thanks, Craig. We have Jenny Lansing on the line here too, who is our senior environmental specialist, who is putting together a lot of the monitoring at the city of Minneapolis. And we're really in initial stages of talking about what are the best tools to use. You talked about purple air. There's a lot of other, every year it seems like there's another round of different technologies that come out, and there's real accuracy concerns with those different technologies. So looking at what are the best types of technology to use in terms of monitoring, and then, like Craig said, working with folks in the community to come up with where we could locate those around Minneapolis, how best to use the data in terms of informing not only our ambient air quality, but close to some of the facilities that folks here have mentioned. Looking at what are the air quality concerns around specific areas, and how we can use some of those tools. So if anyone is interested in being involved with that, we'd love to have community involvement in those conversations and where to locate those monitors and how best to use the monitors. So we're really putting that plan together right now of how can we combine resources between the MPCA and the city of Minneapolis and others, as the MPCA coordinates some of that work to look at local air quality.
And you had 2 other questions.
I'm wondering if... Okay, thanks.
I'm happy to.
Can someone respond to these 20-year-old permits and when they're ever going to be updated?
Yes, I can provide a little bit of an update there. So Smith and Bituminous are 2 that we're in the process of updating, and they're right now in the modeling phase of the project. They are, as you know, in that East Phillips neighborhood, so they are subject to the cumulative impacts analysis there. And I think it's one of those things that we'd be happy to talk more about and bring some of our technical staff in if that's of interest for the group, but they're in the modeling phase. So we are actively working on those permits to understand what are their current emissions and how they're impacting human health and the environment, and also what are the cumulative levels and effects there. So that's where that's at. Representative Clark.
Can I just say, I think we've been told that for several years and years and years now. So what's the end date here?
It's an iterative process, and I'd have to go back to the team to kind of understand exactly where it is in that modeling. But like we said, we'd be happy to come back and pull the right folks into the room for kind of a deeper dive into where we're at the status.
Okay.
Kelly, can I jump in really quick, Karen Clark, really quick, just to give everyone just an update too as well. Abbott Northwest is also in the process of updating their permit. And so we are calling for community conversations with folks in the Phillips wide neighborhood. So please, those that are on the meeting today, please, we'll be in contact with you or to figure out if we could come out and have our team talk about the updates and changes happening in the permit, and then other opportunities where communities can engage on the permit itself. So that's just to add on top of the other kind of interest, right, of air based on Bituminous Smith, but now we have also the permit of Abbott Northwest that we are looking to make sure to engage communities about.
Okay, thanks.
If I could just add that the sand that they use at Smith is impregnated with resin. And when that's heated, which is how they use it for molding, it gives off formaldehyde, it gives off ammonia, it gives off amines and phenols. And so if you're modeling, please model for those things and maybe put a monitor by the daycare center or on the greenway.
Maybe just remove the industry from neighborhoods where people live. I mean.
So I think we want to dive deeper into a number of these topics in breakout rooms, but I'm wondering, Patrick and Jenny, did you want to share any activities that at a high level that are happening at the city to kind of give maybe a little teaser into what folks could be talking about with you in the breakout rooms? You're on mute, Patrick.
Sure, Jenny, you can go into further detail on some of the sampling as you're looking at developing some of that methodology. But we, like Craig talked about, some of the voluntary efforts in terms of working with small businesses. Like we're done working with dry cleaners, but now looking at automotive shops. There are around 50 tons of pollution going into the air from automotive shops around Minneapolis, and as we'll have to bring forward rules around that for getting people to switch from high volatile organic compound, so high solvent paints, to what's called waterborne paints in automotive shops around Minneapolis. So we could use support with that, and like I said, that's around 50 tons of emissions, of volatile organic emissions in the city of Minneapolis. That is more than these industrial facilities that we're talking about. That's more than a few of them put together. So if we could get that rule passed, that would help in terms of getting support when we're ready to write that up. Looking at probably not until 2022 to get that rule in place, just with everything going on in Minneapolis, to be able to get that brought forward. But then they are also quintessential small businesses, so we would have funding to help them make that conversion as well. Jenny's doing a lot of work with nail salons, with the chemical exposure that workers in those facilities are facing every day. For the people going into the facilities, it's not that big of a deal, 10, 20 minutes. But for someone that's working there 8, 10, 12 hours a day, that we have concerns about the exposures to the chemicals that they have. So Jenny's been putting together a program around that. We're partnering on the CARS program that was mentioned earlier on some incentives that we can have for people getting their cars repaired, and partnering with Environmental Initiative, the MPCA, and other folks. I know there's folks on here that have actually been a big part of getting that work brought forward for people in low-income situations and getting their car fixed and more efficient. We're always looking for ways that we can get more voluntary projects done. And when I say that, it's working with businesses and overcoming some of the financial challenges that they have and pulling together resources. And in doing that, we've we've already reduced 60 tons of emissions around Minneapolis. And so going through and finding places, and some of that with businesses on the north side, where they may be following rules, and we've got to stay within those rules. And so how within those rules can we get emission reductions and reduce exposures that people have in the neighborhood under the existing rules. And then I know that there's a lot of concern about Northern Metals with the fire that happened there recently. We had concerns, and I'm saying I'm kind of talking with about the fire department and reg services here in the city of Minneapolis. We had concerns about fires at that facility back when there was a huge fire at Becker that burned for 3 days, and they started to stockpile material in North Minneapolis. So the fire department had been out there on a bi-weekly basis, making sure that the piles were reduced and that fire was as small as it was. That being said, that's not consolation for that there was a fire. So we are working with our fire department, with the MPCA, with Hennepin County, reg services, their fire inspection teams, and looking at what ability do we have, within the city of Minneapolis, within the different organizations, to look at what further restrictions can be placed on the tool we're looking at the city of Minneapolis right now is a business license. So what tools can we apply to a business license? And again, we might need support for that. If we need ordinance change, we might need support for that in making those changes. And so that would be, getting out to the facilities more often, street sweeping. We'd have to look at what our regulatory ability is, and it's not a very powerful regulatory tool in terms of between state, federal, and city level, but we're looking at what tools we have at the city of Minneapolis. And then, one thing I just wanted to say too is, in looking at using these regulations, the reason that we go into these somewhat cautious in really making sure that we have the legal ability is cities and the state as well, as there's lots of parameters that are put on the restrictions and where we can act. And if you overstep those boundaries, you do chance, in fact, I came into the city of Minneapolis right after our unit, we lost a legal lawsuit for $3 million over a noise violation, and our whole team we were regulated to looking at garbage in back alleys from then on. And so it can really restrict what you're allowed to do if you overstep those bounds. And so, we can look at what our ability is. That's how we go into these conversations, is what is our ability to address the hazard, and what might be a public health, what might be affecting public health. And we're looking at what our ability is going into these conversations. And so, we've got to pass that through legal teams, and I'm sure the MPCA is in the same boat, as well as being able to, to know that where we can move, because if we overstep that bounds, we have the ability to end up making a company like Northern Metals even stronger. They could win a lawsuit, and they are litigious, and and that's why getting the support of community members is so helpful as well when we go forward at the state level or even at the city level and passing ordinances, to be able to get the assistance of community and be, I know we're not always on the same page, but to be, looking at these issues together and getting support. So yeah, I don't know if that covered it. Oh, Roxanne.
That sounds, oh Lord. I mean, I just feel like that was a lot.
Move to breakout groups.
Hand raising,
Yeah,
or we just.
but she just opened up. Are we not speaking on Northern Metals then?
I think we're doing a breakout
Almost.
Northern Metals.
I just had a question, and I have my hand up, and not to cut you off, Roxanne. I know you're passionate about Northern Metals, girl, but I have a question about this new project that you're talking about when it comes to these auto shops and switching out the paint. And I commend you for the dry cleaners, and I'm kind of geeked about looking at this machine that you use to show these shop owners about the emissions in their shops. But I'm curious about this paint and where you're going to dispose of it, and do you have a plan? And is it going to be in a landfill, or what for the people that already have it, and from the plant itself and where it's coming from? And are you going to look at different regulations of monitoring it coming into our city or our state again, and what's going to do with the stuff that we already have? And that's timing in, and I'm sorry, I was on the green line and it got chaotic, and so I kind of had to get off there because it was too much drama for me. But anyway, so I'm coming in and asking that question, and I know I missed a lot, but I can listen to the tapes in the future. And sorry again, Roxanne, for cutting you off, but I just had a curiosity about the.
You don't have to be sorry. You don't have to be sorry. It's all good.
Okay, I just, I know you're passionate about Northern Meadows, but I'm just curious about how we're getting rid of all these toxins and where they're going and things like that, because if it's in a landfill, it might raise things like that. So
we don't even have enough time to respond to all the same conversations we're having, and so we don't have time.
Yeah, so Leslie, that's a great question, and I think that's something we learned in the dry cleaning program, is making sure that when we have these programs and these requirements for changeouts, that they have they're dealing with the waste in a proper manner. So that's going to Hennepin County Hazardous Waste, and we get receipts and proof of that. These auto body shops are rolling through large amounts of paint, so it's really once they switch over to waterborne paint, you're really reducing the overall paint that they're ordering on a consistent basis. So you're stopping that paint from coming into the city. And then when we get them to convert out, it's making sure that they take their old solvents and that's properly disposed of. So that's a great question.
Thank you.
I see Joe has your hand raised. If you have a question, go ahead. And then I think we do want to get into breakout rooms.
Yeah, just real quick. This is my first green zone meeting, so I'm just wondering, because we're talking about like data and then cumulative impacts and all these things. Do we create reports, or and how often are they created about like where we are and meeting our goals and lowering pollution rates?
I can start with that for PCA.
Yeah,
I don't know, Patrick, if you want to.
No, that helps, because that's your.
Yeah, maybe I'll just share that at a high level for this Northside and Southside Green Zone, we don't have a report that tracks pollution specifically in these two geographies over time. What we've done is started annual reporting on actions that the group is taking. But no, we don't specifically have reports, I think, on what you're talking about. And Craig, then I'll hand it over to you to talk more generally about the reporting that MPC does.
That's really helpful, Kelly, for this group. So PCA has a couple of regular reports that are required by the legislature. One is called The Air We Breathe, and that's a look at air quality in Minnesota as a whole, but then we do some deeper dives into some of the areas that we've seen, environmental justice communities. So it talks about just kind of where we're at meeting federal regulations and work that needs to be done. That's one report that we have. We have a greenhouse gas emissions report, which is done every 2 years, that looks at greenhouse gas emissions broken out by sector, specifically related to climate change there. And then the third report that we do at a regular basis here is what we call Life and Breath. And that is actually a report. And Andrea just entered some of that into the chat where you can find some of those reports. Our Life and Breath report dives into health impacts, and specifically the impacts of ground level ozone and fine particles on human health, and breaks it down by geography. And that's done in partnership with MDH as well. So there is some regular reporting, but it's not at the granularity of the green zone.
Is that sort of reporting, like at that level, green zone, something that we can request? Because I know, like, for example, during COVID, even though, air pollution decreased in Minneapolis by 20%, it increased by 25% in East Phillips. And I'm sure it's something similar in North Minneapolis. And so even though the numbers we're getting are like, okay, overall, maybe pollution is decreasing in Minneapolis or the state of Minnesota, in these areas that are disproportionately infected, people are getting sicker and sicker, and there isn't data to track that. So the data we're getting is a little bit skewed by these healthier neighborhoods, and that's disturbing.
Yeah, I think Christina, that's a great point. And that's something that, like, as staff for the green zones, I can work on doing and building into the annual reporting. So it's not just about actions taken, but it's about, you know, number of air quality alert days. It could be tracking the annual air pollution data annually. You know, it's most of the information is from state monitors. And then if, you know, for folks who are interested in going into the breakout room on monitoring and sampling, there's additional work that we can do to get much more localized data and not just relying on 1 or 2 monitors in each of the green zones, which only gives you kind of that very specific location and not kind of the community overall.
I got a quick question. How come we have this meeting? The last time we met and Roxanne brought us together with the community injustice people and the pollution control, that the county's not here. All the waste is going to the county and they're over it, but we don't hear from them. They're not in these groups. They don't participate, but this is where our waste goes and they're one of the bigger polluters. And they're not trying to cut down emissions or try to help our well-being as citizens of the city and as residents of the county. And you want to decipher county from city, but the county is the polluters. And they're not doing any incentives or anything to cut down waste in our community. And it's just unbearable. Just like, I'm sorry, but I just see Harlan. He talked about the garbage and all that, and that's all county. And I think that we need to force the county to be a part of these talks when it comes down to cutting the emissions, because they're one of the key players here. And I'm going to shut up. I'm sorry, I can get passionate.
I have a question.
Hey, Kelly, did you want me to say something?
Do you have a response to the question on the county? Yeah, I mean, my only thought, Leslie, on that is they're not a party that I've engaged with on this work. Patrick, were you going to jump in?
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I think that's right on. Like, I think the county needs to be, combining the funding and work that the MPCA is doing with the work that we're doing. If the county stepped into this, we can make short work of a lot of issues. So I think that's right on, is to get some, you know, pressure, but to get the involvement of the county into these programs, and to get some funding and investment into these communities would be great.
Great. And so I know we only have 40 minutes left in our meeting, and I think we could dive deeper into next steps on collaborating on some of these issues if we get into our breakout rooms. So right now, I've put into the chat like 5 different rooms. Now there's my list. Okay, so air monitoring and sampling, Jenny Lansing, I'm thinking will probably be the lead for that one. Permitting and licensing, Patrick, would you probably be the lead on that? And then I'm not sure who from the MPCA would be the lead for either air monitoring, sampling, or permitting and licensing.
This Todd Bewin here at MPCA. I would like to go into the air monitoring group.
All right, great. Thank you, Todd.
I can go into the permitting group, Kelly.
Big.
Hey,
and
Kelly,
then.
Hey, Kelly, this is James.
Yep. Yeah, I'm getting to you, James.
All right.
So, and then there was a group that had met, a few Northside members at their May meeting had met on like legislation issues as well. So I'm wondering if there's still a group interested in that. And I'm guessing that would be Greta. And I don't know if who else from MPCA would want to jump into that group. And then we have, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say probably just me. Thank you.
And then we have meetings with facilities. So James Trice, who's going to kind of give a little preview of that one. James, I would assume you'd be in that meeting. And then Christina, you added a 5th, how to engage with community to make meaningful improvements. Would you consider that to be like voluntary measures, or Jose Luis, you seem like you kind of like are jiving with that one?
Just because I feel like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Together if we can. And the way that I would word it, just kind of like power building if we can, you know, internally and also externally. So we can combine those if people are okay.
Christina, sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Just, you know, how to empower communities and work with the MPCA and the city to actually make these changes.
Great. Okay, so if those sound like the right breakout groups, I will assign people based on their interests. So again, 5 groups: air monitoring and sampling, permitting and licensing, legislation or policies, meeting with facilities, power building / how to community and agencies work together. And so, James, did you have something that you wanted to say to give a little promo for the meeting with facilities breakout?
Yeah, real quick, and this is, and I want to say, well, first of all, thank you all and great work. Green Zone's doing wonderful work, change agents. So I appreciate all of you and all the work you're doing. This important work. EJCC Public Policy Project partnered with environmental initiatives in the city of Minneapolis to have citizens, us, community resident stakeholders, engage the local businesses and facilities around lowering their emissions and lowering their pollution output. Partner with EI. EI will support our work and what AJCC members will be doing. And also I invite Green Zone members who want to be a part of this is to be able to contact these businesses, meet with these businesses, talk to them about you know, their effect on our community. And then also connecting those businesses if necessary with a program as the companies to begin to lower their pollution output. We have some dollars to pay people stipends to do this, so I'm not asking people to do this for free. So we're asking if people want to be a part, let me know, and then we can begin to bring people in to do this. And again, we have limited funds right now. I'm able to give some stipends out to individuals, and we can discuss that as people call and if people show their interest. But let me share the most important part of this work is going to be at the beginning, before we send community residents out, before EJCC members go out to these businesses, they would get a really crash course on environmental hazards, pollutants, and different emissions that companies are doing. And they would get a crash course on who are the top individual polluters. We understand, we all agree that none of them have violated or are in violation of federal air quality standards. But, you know, Roxanne and her work has pointed out the cumulative effects of them, that they together, all 13 or 14, however many there is, they are polluting the air in North Minneapolis. And how do we deal with that? But this will give, again, individuals who want to be a part, a deep training. I don't know how long it's going to be. We're putting that together now. We're planning that, what's going to be in the training, but really a clear understanding of actually how this is working, how our communities are being affected by the pollutants. And so you will go in with understanding and education on what exactly is going on. So now, let me also say this, and I'm done, is the individuals who want just the training, that's fine. You can come in and be a part of that training. You don't have to be one of the engagers, community engagers, engaging these businesses if you don't want to. So I welcome people and invite people who want to be a part of the training itself to participate in the training along with individuals who say they want to be a part of this work. So if anybody has any questions, I don't know if we have time to take those now. I can be reached. People know my number, 612-702-9769. I think people have my email address, James_publicpolicyproject@msn.com. And another email address, pvp.ejcc.com.
Thanks so much, James.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so now I'm gonna go person by person on the list and ask which breakout group you'd like to join and add you to that. So I will start with Andrew.
I'm interested in, I guess, the policy discussion.
All right. Megan.
I can't right now. There's something going on outside and I can't hear anything.
Oh. All right, Jackie.
I'd like to go to the permitting one.
Great. Lene. Let's see. Vanessa.
Policy.
Policy. Okay, thank you. Joe.
Policy.
Christina.
Community engagement.
Akia.
Air monitoring.
Anita.
Permitting.
Michelle.
Legislation, please.
Teacher.
Community engagement.
Thank you. Karen.
The one Jose Luis doing, I don't remember what it's called.
All right, the community engagement power building.
Yeah.
Paula.
Sorry, I'll do the air monitoring.
Leslie.
I'm torn between policy and air emissions. I'll do the emissions.
Okay. Cassandra.
This is not Cassandra Holmes.
I know. You can still be
okay.
assigned.
I'll go into the facility meeting one.
Okay, great. Roxanne.
I'm about to head out to this comedy show, but I appreciate y'all.
Okay.
I won't be joining the rooms. I can't do the exploitation thing, but I'll see y'all later.
Have fun at the comedy show, girl.
Steve.
Community engagement.
Okay, Joe, you're strangers. Okay, Steve, which one did you want?
Monitoring.
Okay, and then so Megan chatted that you wanted power building. So much easier.
Kelly, can you change? Yeah.
Yes. Which one did you want to go to, Yolanda?
Legislation.
Okay, I'm gonna start opening rooms and then continue assigning people. All right. Let's see. Some of these don't seem sticky.
Oh, and can each group have a note taker, please?
Yes, thank you. I will send out an announcement for taking notes. All right. Why is just not everyone showing up. Okay, those who are left remaining. Jim, where would you like to go?
Policies, I guess. Policies.
Cool. Julia?
I don't know. I feel like I was in policy last time, so I don't know if it's helpful to be there again or to go somewhere else.
Sure, let's put you in policies.
Sure.
Fox?
I suppose I'll also go to the legislation and policy group.
Cool.
Thank you.
Andrea?
So meeting with facilities, that's its own meeting, right?
Yes, and because James is on the phone and I can't move people on the phone, we're going to stay in this room. So if
Okay.
you're interested in that one, we'll stay
Sure.
here.
Okay.
Helen?
I'm torn between this one and policy. But I'll sounds like there's plenty of folks in policy, so
you stay here.
I can stay here.
Ellen? Maybe not there. Lene, did you have? You're on mute.
I chose legislation, but I don't know how to go there.
Okay. I didn't hear you before, so that's probably why. Now you should be off. And okay, so then
Ellen,
anyone else
muted? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, put me on. Sorry, I thought you were unmuting people. Policy, please.
Okay. Great. So then everyone else who is here has either chosen to have conversation about permitted facilities or has logged into the meeting in such a way that I can't move you. So you're stuck in this conversation. I am gonna quick send a message to everyone about note taking. And the thing that I was gonna mention is the primary questions are, how do we collaborate on this? Who's missing from the conversation? And what's at least one next step between now and October or September that we can take? So James, if you are still on, I'll let you kind of take this away.
Well, I'm on, but I'm driving, so I'm not able to take notes. Is there someone able to do that?
Yeah, I can take notes.
Yeah, I've been driving for the whole time, so I just pulled over. So I have no pencil or paper or nothing like that. So thank you. Or no way to type it in. I don't have my laptop or nothing like that with me. All right. So are we ready to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Who's all in the room here?
Yeah, do we want to do quick
Names?
introductions?
I can't see anybody, so
Yeah.
quick introductions. Anyone?
I can start. This is Cassandra Meyer. I live in South Minneapolis, just outside of the green zones, and I also work at the MPCA in air permitting, but I'm here as a community member tonight.
Okay.
I'll jump in next. This is Andrea Canoyer, and I work at the MPCA on the communications team.
Okay.
And this is Helen Waku, and I'm the Director of Public Engagement and Tribal Liaison for the Pollution Control Agency. And I also oversee the work of our Environmental Justice and Engagement Unit.
Okay.
And then it's myself, Kelly, and I think, from what I can tell, I think that is everyone that is in our conversation right now.
Okay. Well, let me start off by saying Public Policy Project. I'm sure some of you have heard of Environmental Justice Coordinating Council, right? Do I need to give a description of EJCC to people? Yes, no?
I don't know. Andrea or Helen, are you familiar with EJCC?
No.
Yeah. You want to give a 101?
All right. I'll give you 101. I will also ask that I'm going to give you my website and it'll give you more detailed information. I'm just going to do a quick overview. But the website is www.ppp-ejcc.com. www.ppp-ejcc.com. My name is James Trice. I am the founder and the CEO of Public Policy Project. Primarily, our work has been around leadership development, civic engagement, community organizing. I'm a registered lobbyist around issues that impact communities. We do community engagement around issues that impact communities. And so we are leading in the community engagement aspect around the Up Harbor Terminal. The last 2 years, we've conducted like 14 learning tables where we brought the developer, the city, the parks, the community together, really just to plan on what's going to be developed at the Up Harbor Terminal. So we're leading in that community engagement aspect. We call it, again, the learning tables. We did that over the last year and a half. So the meetings were like once a month, every month, 4 hours each. And each time the developer was there, the parks are there, the city's there. So I don't want to get too much into that, but that's part of our work. Prior to that, we was approached by a foundation asking, how can they invest in addressing environmental concerns in North Minneapolis? And I brought a team of people together. We sat down and we kind of just racked our brain to kind of think through it. We sent this funder like 6 different proposals. The one they chose is the one to really bring people together and allow community residents to address environmental issues with support. And so therefore we brought what my company did a series of listening sessions where we talk with community activists, community change agents, African-American leaders, African-American change agents in North Minneapolis around environment and environmental justice. After a series of those conversations, we brought individuals who participated in those conversations on a boat ride, on a cruise on the Mississippi River with this particular funder. And so they can engage this funder in what they actually wanted. Now, prior to that, my company, we wrote the report of the synopsis of the conversations we had with community residents. And overwhelmingly, they said they wanted to participate in addressing environmental concerns. Again, so then fast forward to on the trip, the boat trip with the foundation. The foundation was impressed. So they invested in us creating an Environmental Justice Coordinating Council, a group of African-American change agents, organizers in North Minneapolis focused on addressing environmental concerns. When we first started, our very first meeting we quickly realized that that environmental justice is not just about air, water, and soil, but it's about so much more that Black and brown communities suffer. Unemployment, food deserts are an environmental issue. Over-policing, police brutality, drive-by shootings, unemployment, and all of those things we considered, and they considered environmental issues. So we stuck with the slogan, all issues are environmental issues and all environmental issues are ours. And so we created this council and they met, and when we created the council, we also created an environmental justice partnership. And that partnership was created to change the dynamics of how environmental issues are addressed and who leads in that conversation. And as you know, that mainstream environmental organizations are primarily led by white people. They get millions and millions of dollars to address issues that we as Black and brown communities suffer most from. We're the ones that suffer most from the environmental injustice overburden. And but we're not at the table leading in the discussion about what we need to happen so that we can breathe clean air just like the rest of society. And so we created this environmental justice partnership. We met with several NEOs from around the state, mainstream environmental organizations, again, all white, and a group of African-American change agents, grassroots organizers, called themselves the Environmental Justice Coordinating Council, met at this foundation's headquarters and did a whole day of learning how NEOs should and must engage communities of color as leaders in their organization, supporting Black and brown communities, and really being on the forefront of addressing environmental concerns. And so to the Environmental Justice Partnership, MEOs committed to partnering with grassroots organizations and community organizers around environmental justice. And so the first group to really dive in with us has been Environmental Initiative. And so we just formed a partnership by which Environmental Initiative is going to work with EJCC, give them the support they need to help them continue to move and continue to do the things they're doing. Work with us if we want polluters out of the community. They will bring their social capital, their political capital, of course, their money capital to the table to support our communities. And so recently, we engaged the city of Minneapolis around the program that city of Minneapolis has around, approaching these polluters with programs that the city has to encourage these business owners to reduce their pollutants. And so Environmental Initiatives called us in to work with them on it. And so now what we're going to be doing is, first of all, a training of those who want to be a part of this engagement and around, again, environmental injustice. And then we're going to work with these community members, with EJCC members, to engage and lead in that engagement with these businesses. Just to convince them. Somebody in a meeting that was at, or I was on an ad a few weeks ago, talked about how to get, how to get people to join you and be on your side, how to get polluters or people who are perceived, enemies to our community, to seduce them into supporting the work that we do. I wouldn't go as far as say seduce, but to convince them that it's in their best interest to really lower their emissions. And so we haven't begun yet. We actually we're just in the process of creating the actual curriculum for the training. We will be in that training, who will be a part of that training, and how long is that training going to be? We're just finalizing those details. We should know more by the end of this week. We have EJCC members, I think each and every one of the right now present 6 EJCC members have said they want to be a part, at least of the training. And I have at least 2 or 3 that have committed to being one of the community engagers to meet with and talk with these companies in the community. I have a few dollars that I want to give people, pay people for their time. If anybody knows me, they know that I am a stickler on paying people for their time. I don't like to ask people to do anything voluntarily, particularly Black and brown people, because we've always been asked to give away our intellectual properties, and then we never get compensated for it. So I believe 100% in compensating people for their time. So work, the engagers, they will be compensated. They will get a stipend. And then the whole point is to get these companies, these facilities, to apply for the services that the city has to help them reduce, again, their pollutants. And so we're trying to just make that happen. We felt like it would be more advantageous for community residents to empower themselves by educating themselves on what really is going on, what do all these terms mean, O2 emissions and all of that. What does that mean to people, right? What does it mean, to have these shops and understand what these shops are dealing with, and know the harm that it's causing to our community. To actually know that information, so they can speak intelligently to these business owners, these facility managers, and decision makers around these facilities. So to try that approach. Yet at the same time, EI be working with us to do advertisement, massive public awareness on how we're moving with this project. And so they're going to be supporting that part of the work. So I don't know. I think I've shared enough, but I'll be open to questions. And again, I invite you to visit the website. It'll tell you a lot more information than what I'm giving you right now. And I apologize, my throat gets kind of scratchy during this time of year. Give me 1 second. I got to get some water.
Thanks, James. I know, Helen, you were kind of talking a little bit about, it made it sound like earlier you'd been thinking about kind of next steps on what meetings with facilities could be like. I'm curious what your initial thoughts or reactions are to what James shared.
Yeah, and I do remember James, and I just didn't recognize the acronym. So I went to the website and heard your name, James. I remember you and am familiar with your group. Yeah, the meeting I was bringing up, you know, and I didn't know this project was going on that you were embarking on and working with partners. You know, we just been being asked as an agency, you know, to bring facilities to the table along with community, or just invite facilities to a room and have the community there. And so even embracing that role as a, you know, the agency being seen as, you know, we have contacts and an ability to ask people to be there. We can't require facilities yet, which is something we're hoping to accomplish via legislation to require engagement. Even if we can't require facilities to do that now, we know we could ask and they may come. So my question at the beginning of the main meeting was, what are the goals and purposes of that meeting? Like, because I'm just assuming and thinking, you know, if we send an invitation to a facility, come sit at the table with the community, they're going to ask us, well, what are we accomplishing here? You know, they're just going to yell at us, or they're just wanting us to leave and we're not going to leave, you know. So thinking about how to make that a meaningful conversation of, you know, between the two, and not just hope that people show up and then, you know, if they do show up, that the right people do come, you know, that it's not just lawyers showing up and decide, okay, we're done here. You know, just kind of, I really wanted to understand in setting up for that, how can we help make that meaningful rather than just send an email and say, please come. That's kind of what I was bringing up at the beginning and sharing. And yeah, I wasn't aware that these other meetings that you just mentioned were already being planned. And I'm not sure how involved the North and South Green Zone are in those. So also just understand the main purpose and goals would be helpful.
Okay. Who did I hear from just now? What's your name?
This is Helen Waku. I'm the Director of Public Engagement and Tribal Liaison for Pollution Control.
Yeah, I'm getting a bad reception. I can barely hear you. Please forgive me. But I hope you can hear me better. I hope you can hear me better, because you're kind of choppy, and that's maybe because I'm in my car. So I apologize, but I did hear most of the question, and thank you so much for asking. I think it was a great question to find out what the purpose is. I think, you know, our ultimate purpose for this community engagement process that we're undertaking, I think number one, to me, the most important piece for me is to get community members to really, really understand these environmental issues, understand what these pollutants are and where they are, and what communities are more polluted, and what companies and groups or facilities are causing some of this, and really understand what these terms mean, and really getting that understanding. So then we can, and so that's to me the most important piece. The second piece is to approach them with a different strategy. And that strategy is to invite them to take advantage of the incentives that the city has for them if they would begin to lower their emission. So to approach them in that kind of way. I think if we approach them in that kind of way to say, look, we want to work with you, but yet they see community, and these are so the community members that are going to be in front of them. You know, it's not going to be the typical. It's not going to be you guys in Minneapolis Pollution Control Agency or the Minneapolis Health Department. A bunch of suits that they see. We want to see. I think to place in front of them community residents who understand really what's going on and say, please reduce this, and asking them to reduce this at first and advertise around this. Hey, look, and if they do, like, hey, this company has agreed to put X amount of filters on their, on their plant or whatever else, whatever they begin to do. So I think that would open the door for them then to have a larger community meeting that I think they would be willing to come to, because I think it's going to depend upon our approach. And if we approach it from a standpoint of partnership, and that work in partnership with these communities, and begin to lower this, because it's for the life of all of us. So I think that's the main purpose. I do think that that we can have a successful meeting and create some goals about what we want out of that would be beneficial for all. You're right. There's no law that's going to force them to meet with us. But I do think that we approach them in a different way, and they hear from really community members themselves, not just in front of their doors and saying, you got to get the hell out of North Minneapolis, but to say, look, we understand you running the business here, but your business is killing us. What can we do to help you stop killing us, right? And see these faces. I'm assuming that we're going to appeal to their human side, right? That they wouldn't want their kids living in the environments that they are creating for Black and Brown communities.
James?
And so to do that, yes.
So we're at time to bring everyone back from their breakout rooms, and I apologize, I was not the best facilitator in terms of keeping us to our questions, which is how do we collaborate, who's missing, and identify at least one next step between now and October. So I'm wondering if in the next couple seconds, if maybe Helen, Andrea, Cassandra, and James, you could all think of like what would be a good next step and maybe drop it in the chat. James, I know you can't drop it in the chat, but maybe the folks who are on Teams.
I can say what the next
I'm going to start bringing
all
people
of us
back.
All of us need to meet. If we all meet and really flush this out, I think that's a good next step. I'm open to meeting with each and every one of you who are in this.
Those of us doing the work. Oh my, sorry. Looks like we got kicked out. We're done? Kelly!
I did give a 2-minute warning. It sounds like I got
We
to
need to
interrupt
do
a
this
whole
again. We need to
bunch
do
of
this
conversations.
again.
Yeah, this is not the end. We definitely need to continue this conversation, Kelly, with all of y'all.
Did everyone identify a next step? If you did, please drop that into the chat. We don't have time right now to go around verbally, unfortunately, but it would be great to just sort of see those come in. I know the group that I was in was just identifying it right at the end that we need to meet soon to keep talking.
Yeah, and we also at our end kind of talked about how we need organizations need funding to convene these hard conversations.
Let's charge it to the county. They never show up.
Hey, Kelly, can I say something about that?
Yeah, go ahead, James.
Kelly. So I just want to, are we all back together now?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to remind the group that you all have $6,000 that I'm holding for you. And I don't know how many of you knew that. And that's money that you all can decide you want to use, and in whatever way you want to use it. And then, you may be willing to use part of that to, pay stipends to people who engage these businesses, these facilities, who reach out to them and talk with them, have meetings with them, to talk about the effects. You may want to give stipends. It's your choice. But I've been holding the $6,000 for you for 2 years. So decide what you want to do with it. It's not going anywhere. It's still in my account. But I'm letting you know that you do have $6,000.
And as clarification, that's Northside Green Zone funds that were left over
Yes.
from 2019. All right, with 2 minutes remaining, I see one hand raised. Karen, did you have something?
Just a clarification on that last comment. Were you talking about just the Northside Green Zone? Is that what you said, Kelly?
Yes. Yep. So when
Okay.
Southside had one-time funding in 2019 that we put out for the community projects. Do you remember when Alejandro and Shalini helped with that? So Northside had some money as well, and there's still 6,000 remaining of that to be spent.
Okay.
So Kelly, can I just say 2 words to Greta and Andrew? So the point that I asked for next steps, Greta, was in regards to community and agencies collaboration. Did New Jersey have some lessons learned or some of those that we could utilize? That was when we got kicked out of the joining. Thank you.
All right. So Greta and Andrew, did you capture that?
I think we were on the same page. And Yolanda was kind of mid-sentence, right, when it cut out. But we definitely, I think, would love to have the input from the progress or the work that you put in, Yolanda and Vanessa. But as Julia has put out here in the chat, we'd like to partner with members who've had success and try and duplicate some of that success combined with what work we put in or members have put in previously to both Northside and Southside Green Zone councils.
We are now at 7 o'clock. I want to thank everyone so much for your time and deeply apologize for the error in sending out the wrong link so that 12 of you ended up in the wrong meeting. I'm embarrassed and I won't do it again. You know, you kind of have to learn from your mistakes, right? So we will have another joint meeting of the Northside-Southside Green Zone in a few months. In the meantime, I hope we can take action on some of these next steps. I will be taking note of all of these. Julia will be helping me make sure that we follow up and we are accountable to this work. I'm super excited for these conversations. And unless anybody has any quick announcements, I would say we could move to adjourn. Karen, you have a...
Look forward to meeting
second
again.
motion for adjournment.
Thank you, Leslie.
I second.
Everybody be
I
safe.
thought Karen had something
and
to
have
say.
a good 4th of July. Be safe, everybody. It's good seeing everybody smiling and healthy.
Can I finish what I was saying?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Karen.
Karen, we didn't get to hear anything. We haven't heard anything.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say I sent a resolution just before the meeting to Kelly that I would ask at this point could be distributed for everybody to look at for another meeting where we actually have a quorum. What the resolution was to support the Southside Green Zone's work right now. And I don't know if that's been sent out yet. Kelly, did you get to send it out or no?
No, I received it once the meeting had started.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, it's talking about what we're doing in East Phillips and supporting our project there and asking basically that what the green zones are about, both Northside and Southside, that there be enforcement of our work, you know, and it's a resolution to say that to the city and to ourselves and to the community. So if this could be something that could send out and people could look at it over the course of the next, I don't know, few weeks. When are we meeting again? I didn't hear that. And maybe we
Southside's,
could
yeah, Southside's next meeting is July 26th.
Yeah, I know.
And then Northside meets on August 3rd.
Okay, well, there's still time then for both folks to consider it. And if Kelly, if you could send it out to everybody, I'd appreciate that. It can be modified as a draft, and we'd like some more input from the north side. Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely will look at that.
Thanks, Karen.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Thanks, Kelly. And thank you, Pollution
Thank you,
Control,
Kelly.
for attending our meeting, and the city of Minneapolis. We're appreciative. Thank you for joining us and all the information that you provide. And hopefully in the future, we can continue to work together and bring these talks that not only talk about it, let's do about it, be about it. This is our city. This is where we live. We got to breathe this crap. Okay.
I can say that Patrick and Craig were in the permitting group that I was in, and one of the things that we talked about was to create a relationship between the city and the PCA with our green zones, the south side, north side, and continue on meeting with them present, and like I said, creating that relationship so that we all have other interests and groups that we work with, and so we can take that and spread that even further.
Yes, ma'am. Sound like a plan. And we need a county here. The county got to show up.
Yeah. County's afraid.
Yeah, Anita, if you have any recommendations on who to connect with, I actually don't have any relationships.
I would
with the
say
county.
Rosemary Lavin would be the one who could probably appoint somebody to come.
Yeah, we could probably check with Joan too. I bet she knows some folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. I hope you have a great night. Stay safe. Have a good holiday weekend.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Kelly. Thanks,
Say,
everyone.
Helen, it's good to
Bye.
see you.
Bye.
Bye. All.
Thank you.
Bye.